UFC Vegas 49 is almost here. DraftKings has released the salary so we could take our first look. You can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. We crushed last week. Absolutely crushed. Mark Striegel is dead to us. I don't need to explain that to you, but outside of that, we were damn near perfect. I plan on continuing that momentum into this week on a really nice card to attack, and it's a lot different than last week's card. And from last week's video, there's a lot of new subscribers, so welcome to the family. Come on in. You're going to start earning. It's going to feel good. And as always, we start at the top of the slate. This week, we have Islam Makhachev. He's 9,500. He's fighting Bobby Green. Bobby Green stepping in on short notice in place of Beneil Dariush. And now that Dariush is pulled out, Makhachev has a much better matchup on his hands here against Bobby Green. In my opinion, Islam beats everybody at 155 pounds except maybe Charles Oliveira. The grappling, the awareness, physical strength, the gas tank to keep all that up, that's all what makes Islam dangerous for anybody in the division. And Beneil Dariush created a really interesting matchup because of his strong jiu-jitsu, but Bobby Green's not going to present the same kind of challenge. If this were a boxing match, Bobby Green all day. But Makhachev is going to have success getting this fight where he wants it, just like he always does. And he's going to pick up another submission win in this spot. If you've looked at his last 3 wins, 3 straight submissions, I think he keeps the streak going. And we've seen Bobby Green taken down several times in his UFC career by lesser grapplers. And one thing that I think is being massively overlooked about this fight is that because Bobby Green is stepping in on short notice, it's not a 155-pound fight. It's a catch weight of 160. Makhachev is a big dude for the division who cuts a lot of weight, and for him to have that extra 5 pounds to work with, that is a huge difference. I know on the surface, 5 pounds doesn't seem like much, but for somebody like Islam Makhachev, that's going to be a huge relief for him coming into fight week. So the pick for this fight is Islam Makhachev by submission. At 9,300, Ramiz Brahimaj is stepping in on short notice. He's going to be fighting Michael Gilmore this week. Now, Gilmore was supposed to fight Johnny Parsons this week. Parsons pulled out, and now Brahimaj has taken this fight only a month removed from his last fight where he looked terrible against Court McGee. So this fight is probably do or die for Brahimaj. He has to win this fight, keep his spot on the UFC roster, and he probably needs to get the finish to look good enough to stay. Luckily for him, he has the perfect matchup and situation to do exactly that. Michael Gilmore, 4 pro losses on his record, 1 professional loss in the Ultimate Fighter that isn't really counted. But of these 5 losses, 4 of them by way of submission. 1 was his most recent loss against Andre Petrosyan. That was by way of ground and pound. He was taken down 5 times in that fight. So the path to victory for Ramiz Brahimaj is very clear, very obvious. It's so obvious that it makes it scary to play him this week. Because ideally, he goes out there, secures 1 takedown, maybe 2, gets the submission, scores over 100 points, just like he did against Sasha Palatnikov. And I expect that to be the outcome this week, but buyer beware. He has got terribly low fight IQ, and that might cost him in this fight. Michael Gilmore has power. Ramiz Brahimaj doesn't have great striking, so there is some value on the other side, but I think the most likely outcome is Brahimaj by submission, and at 9,300, better damn be. The pick for me is Ramiz Brahimaj. It's going to be by submission. At 9,100, we have Armen Tsarukyan. He's going to be fighting Yoel Alvarez this week. Now, Tsarukyan is very talented, strong wrestler, decent striker. He has a great record, and he always gets a lot of respect from Vegas. Outside of his debut against Islam Makhachev, he's been a sizable favorite in every one of his UFC fights, including this one. But the line for this fight is way off, in my opinion. I'm surprised he's this expensive against somebody like Yoel Alvarez. When you look at Tsarukyan, he's a bit boring. He lacks finishing upside. Look, of his 4 UFC wins, 3 of them have gone decision. He's not scoring a ton of points. He ragdolled Matt Frevola. So, of course, he's going to have a good score on DraftKings, but at the same time, to secure 10 takedowns and only score 126 points, that's kind of low. On the other side of this, you have Yoel Alvarez, who's got a 100% finish rate in his 19 professional wins. And there's a lot to like about Alvarez in this matchup. Physically, he's going to look way bigger. He's going to have an 8-inch height advantage, 5-inch reach advantage, and that's probably why he misses weight so often. He's huge for 155 pounds. And I think that size advantage is going to serve him very well on the feet. He's probably going to get the better of these striking exchanges. And of those 19 pro wins, 16 have come by way of submission. So if Tsarukyan starts spamming takedowns, that's Yoel Alvarez's world. So he could easily get caught with something on the ground. This guy's a finisher, and I think that if he misses weight, they'll probably make him fight at 170. But if he makes weight, it'll be a serious problem at 155 pounds. especially with a statement win over somebody like Tsarukyan. And if Tsarukyan wins, then it's probably a decision. He probably doesn't score you enough points on DraftKings to make him viable at 9,100. So I'm going to go the other way here. So the pick for this fight is Yoel Alvarez inside the distance. He's one of the juicier dog options this week. Next at 9,000, we have Ignacio Bahamandes. He's going to be fighting Rong this week. This fight should be a scrap. Possible fight of the night with the way these guys operate. Bahamondes fights at a ridiculous pace, constantly throwing strikes. You'll see here 124 strikes thrown, 117 strikes thrown. On the other side, Rong throws power on the feet, but he would prefer to get this fight on the ground. Evidence of that could be seen in his last 2 UFC fights where he secured 9 total takedowns. So it would appear that we have a bit of a striker versus grappler situation on our hands. And on this channel, we prefer to go with the grappler in a situation like this because of how DraftKings is scored. And the link to where we talk about that is in the description under Build Better Lineups. So by that logic, the pick is Rong, right? Just because of the takedown upside. No. Actually, no. Rong, while he likes to go for takedowns, is going to have a serious problem taking down Bahamondes, who has a 100% takedown defense. He's going to have a 6-inch height advantage and a 4.5-inch reach advantage. It's kind of hard to get those bigger guys down because they're able to keep their balance so easily. I think Rong might have some real trouble doing that this week. On top of that, Zhu is not the most defensively sound. He leans on his toughness more than maybe he should, and you can say the same for Bahamondes. He gets hit a lot, but the dude's got ridiculous heart. I'm going with the Chilean this week. I think he stuffs the takedowns, uses his height and reach, throws a ton of strikes, and gets the decision win. So the pick for me for this fight is Ignacio Bahamandes by decision in what should be a war. At 8,900, we have Josie Ann Nunez. She's fighting UFC debutant Ramona Pascual this week, and she is a lock in Josie Nunez by all means, because she's going to get a knockout probably inside the first round in this fight. She's a legit knockout artist, coming in as a big favorite, best matchup on the card. There's a lot to like here. She will be at a 5-inch reach disadvantage, but I don't think that's much of a disadvantage in this spot. I can actually see that working to her benefit. I don't see Pascual being able to use her height effectively to get out of harm's way. I actually think that she's going to leave her chin in harm's way by trying to do that tall guy defense like this. And when she does, Josie Nunez will be there. She'll get the knockdown, follow up with strikes on the ground, get you a ton of points. I'm going to have her in my lineups. The pick for me is Josie Nunez by knockout. At 8,800, we have John Martinez. He's going to be fighting Alejandro Perez this week. This is a fight with 2 kind of mid-level bantamweights. They don't really look for takedowns, not a whole lot of striking power either. So from a DraftKings perspective, you might want to stay away from this. Now, Martinez is a decent favorite as of now, and I expect him to win this fight, but I don't expect him to score many points. The reality is he could score 60, 50, 60, 70 points, and that really isn't going to do much for you. He's largely a point fighter who likes to fight from the outside and exchange strikes, and that's just not a DraftKings friendly strategy. And now he is a decent striker, and he is going to have a slight height and reach advantage. Couple that with knowing that Perez isn't going to be shooting for takedowns either, then you've got a situation where Martinez looks like a solid straight bet. From a DraftKings perspective though, I'm staying far away from this one. Martinez, just because of the name recognition, may pick up some ownership, but I can see a lot of the field seeing what we're seeing right now, just not a whole lot of upside. To me, on paper, this looks like a fight that's going the distance, and the winner lands 60 strikes total and just outpoints the other guy. Close competitive fight, but not a whole lot of activity. So the pick for me is Jonathan Martinez by decision, but on DraftKings, at least early this week, not looking to get there. At 8,700, Jinh Frey, she's fighting Hannah Goldy this week, and this is another fight that I'm going to be staying away from. If you do play this fight, you might as well roster the underdog in Hannah Goldy because, frankly, I don't see how Jinh Frey wins this. She's got next to no power. She's nearly 37 years old, and physically, she might get dominated in this spot by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean Hannah Goldy. And if Frey does win, she probably scores 65 points on DraftKings, and that really isn't enough to make her viable at 8,700. Even if she does come in at low ownership. And I think the physicality coupled with her low output are going to be the things that lose her this fight this week. I could see Goldie having success on the feet and just winning rounds based on volume. So the pick for this fight is Hannah Goldie by decision. At 8,600, we have Ji-Yeon Kim. She's fighting Priscilla Cachoiera this week. What you could like about her is that she's got decent output. She throws a decent amount of strikes, but that is about it. She doesn't shoot for takedowns, ever. She has virtually no finishing upside, and she gets into these firefights relying on her chin. And while toughness and just continuing to throw punches despite what's coming back at you might work against some other fighters in this division, it's not going to work against somebody like Priscilla Cachoeira, who is actually throwing bombs back her way. And if you look at Kim's stats, it supports it. If she does what she normally does, which is absorb more strikes than she lands, and she lands a lot of strikes, she is going to go down at some point. She's very tough, but biology only goes so far. So I actually prefer the other side of this with Priscilla Cachoeira. If you wanted to take a shot, I think that from an underdog perspective, she's probably the best female underdog on the card and is going to come in at low ownership. That might be a good leverage spot for you. The pick for me for this fight is Priscilla Cachoeira by knockout. At 8,500, we have Greg Rodrigues. RoboCop is welcoming Armen Petrosyan to the UFC. Greg Rodrigues is a beast in this weight class. He throws big power. He's got excellent throws in the clinch, and he's going to have a big experience advantage in this fight. He's always live for a finish. I don't see this fight going the distance at all. I picked him in his last fight to win against Iron Turtle, which was a crazy one. If you watched it, you know exactly what I mean. Both fighters looked like they were going to find the finish at different points in the fight, but RoboCop found a way to win. But there were moments in that fight where he looked like he was in serious trouble and he was getting rocked. And if you couple that with his knockout loss on the Contender Series to Jordan Williams, I'm left thinking that he loses this fight. For as good as Rodrigues is, defensively, he leaves a lot to be desired. He's 6'3" and tends to do what a lot of taller fighters do. They got the tall guy defense where they lean back to try to avoid strikes. That tall guy defense is scary to bet on. We even saw Israel Adesanya, a striker of his caliber, doing that against Robert Whittaker in their fight. He kept leaning back and Whittaker kept scoring with that lead hand hook. And if somebody like Greg Rodrigues, who we've seen knocked out, we've seen rocked, we've seen wobbled before, if he does anything like that against Armen Petrosyan, he's getting slept. What I like about Petrosyan is that he's never seen the judges' scorecards. All of his wins have been by way of knockout. He fights at a rapid pace. If you watch him fight, he's kind of a wild man, right? He throws bombs, and that's kind of the blueprint to beat somebody like Greg Rodrigues. It's early in the week, and money has already started coming in on Petrosyan, and I could see why. The high finishing upside, maybe the more polished striker in this spot, and we're getting him at a really good price. And I say good price because if he goes out there and starches RoboCop inside the first or second round like I think he's going to, he's probably going to be real expensive on your sports books and on DraftKings by the next time he gets matched up. So the pick for me for this fight is Armen Petrosyan inside the distance. I'm going to say first round knockout. Next to 8,400, we have Firas Ziam. He is going to be fighting Terrance McKinney this week. I see Firas as a slight favorite as of right now, and I'm surprised because there are a lot of things that I like about Terrance McKinney this week and not a whole lot of things that I like about Firas Ziam this week. The pick for this fight is Terrance McKinney. I'll talk more about him when we get down there in the salary. Next to 8,300, we have Misha Serkinov. He's fighting Wellington Turman this week. This is Misha Serkinov's second fight at middleweight since moving down from light heavyweight. In his last fight against Krzysztof Jotko, he lost a split decision, which is a really, really bad look. Jotko is one of, if not the least dangerous guy at 185 pounds. And Cirkunov struggled, especially later in that fight. Now, his path to victory is clear, right? Secure the takedown, look for the choke, don't let this fight last too long. But I think that he's going to have a hard time doing that against Wellington Turman. Turman has had some mixed results in the UFC, but I don't think that his record really tells the whole story. He lost his UFC debut to Carl Roberson. He was 22 years old, and that was a split decision loss. He goes on to beat Marcus Perez, gets knocked out by a pretty fluky punch from Andrew Sanchez, and he gets knocked out by Bruno Silva. No shame in that. Happens to a lot of people. And then he goes on to win a split decision against Sam Alvey, where I wish I could say that he looked better than he did. But now he's 25 years old, not even close to his fighting prime, and he's got a wealth of experience under his belt. And I expect us to see the best version of Wellington Turman in this fight, and I think that he's going to be able to stuff the takedowns, get some of his own, and really get the job done in this spot. The pick for me in this fight is Wellington Turman. I'm going to say inside the distance. I think he finds a way to get this done. I think it might might come later, maybe third round finish for Turman. I just don't expect Cirkunov to be able to hang that late in the fight. Now, this week at the 8,200 and 8,000 range, we have two fighters that are making their debut. Normally we talk about how important it is to get this range right. I don't think it is this week. This fight can go either way. Both these guys coming in show pretty similar skill set. I think there's a little bit more love for the favorite here in Carlos Hernandez, but I wouldn't be surprised if Altamirano was able to pull one out here. I do, however, believe that this fight goes the distance. There's nothing really for us to go off of in terms of UFC experience for either of these guys. I do think that the fight goes the distance. I don't think that either one scores that many points. I think it might even be a sloppy fight because these guys are both making their debut. There might be a lot of nervous energy coming in, but I do expect it to see the judges' scorecards. As of right now, this is a fight that I'm staying away from. Now, at the top of this video, we talked about how this slate is different than recent slates. The reason why I say that is because there are a lot of viable options below 8,000 this week. For the last few weeks, favorites have been crushing it, and we've had to be very sharp when it comes to looking at these plays below 8,000. But this week, I don't think that's the case. A lot of these options are viable. I expect the dogs to go barking this week. This is our energy all week right here. This is where our mindset is this week. So we start with Wellington Turman. Listen, I think that Wellington Turman has a really favorable matchup on his hands. I think Misha Serkinov is one-dimensional. Yes, he has a little bit of power, but he's really just looking for the choke, or he has nothing. Wellington Turman does not take a punch well, like at all. But he's not going to be out-grappled. And although we haven't seen a lot of finishing upside from him in the past, I do think that he's going to give a very good account of himself. He could find himself in real dominant positions later in this fight, where he can look for that finish. At 7,800, I really like Terrance McKinney this week. I expect a ton of people to play him, and it's really for good reason. Again, he's a showstopper. Heavy hands, very, very athletic as well, and he's going to bring the fight to Faraz in this spot. I could see a first-round knockout for T-Rex in this spot. Just look at what he did against Matt Frivola. Perfect 1-2 down the middle. Didn't put everything into it. And if you look at some of his past fights, stuff like this is just what Terrance McKinney does. He scores knockdowns, he scores knockouts, he does it quickly, and he brings a crazy pace. You really didn't see the pace in his first fight because he won in 7 seconds, but I think we'll see that here against Faraz Ziam. And Ziam is good. Ziam is a slick, technical striker. He's only 24, so he's still maturing in this game. But my issue with him is that he likes a pretty fight. He likes a technical kickboxing match on the outside. That's not the kind of fight he's going to get with Terrance McKinney. The line for this fight surprised me. I actually thought that McKinney was going to be the more expensive play on DraftKings. It surprised me to see McKinney as a slight underdog to start the week. But I expect money to pour in on him this week. There's a decent amount of hype there, and if that happens, he's probably going to end up being the favorite by the time fight time comes around. So that presents the rare situation where you can pay under 8,000 salary for someone who's favored to win the fight. I like Terrance McKinney this week. I like him by knockout. At 7,700, we have Armen Petrosyan. He's going to be fighting Greg Rodrigues, and again, I think there's a lot of value on this side. Greg Rodrigues, not the most defensively sound. Armen Petrosyan brings the fight, and he's a legitimate knockout artist. If you ever watch the guy fight, he's a wild man. And I think we're going to see that on full display against Greg Rodrigues this week. And there are a few factors that are going to be holding down his ownership this week that I think are really important. He doesn't have that many fights. Greg Rodrigues is a destroyer. He's not the favorite in this spot, and he's making his UFC debut. I think at 7,700, this is a good place to get to. I expect Armen Petrosyan to win by knockout. At 7,600, Priscilla Cachoiera is interesting as well. We know that Kim isn't looking for takedowns, and the way to beat Priscilla Cachoiera is taking her down, tiring her out, putting a pace on her that's more grueling, more grappling heavy. We've seen fighters in the UFC have success with this against her before, but those who choose to stand with her get knocked out. There's a very real possibility that Kim gets knocked out in this fight. Now, Cachoeira is coming in on short notice. She doesn't have the greatest gas tank to begin with, so there is concern there because we know how tough Kim is. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of value here at 7,600 because there's high finishing upside on the side of Priscilla Cachoeira. Hannah Goldie at 7,500, I expect her to win a decision just based on the volume, based on the physical strength, and being able to get out of some bad positions that Frey might put her in. But I I don't expect her to score a whole lot of points in that effort. This isn't a fight that I'm looking to target, but at 7,500, I'd much prefer that side. Alejandro Perez at 7,400. He's a guy that prefers to keep the fight on the feet. He likes to strike. Martinez likes to strike. My issue is just with the pace of this fight. I don't expect the winner of this fight to score that many points because I do expect it to be kind of a low-scoring affair. Just strikes from the outside, nobody being finished. Ramona Pascual, no chance. This halo that she's got on the picture right here, it's not because she doesn't have a picture. It's just a preview of things to come. Josie Nunez is going to send her to a place where time doesn't exist. I'm not interested at 7,300 this week. Rong, pretty low fight IQ. I think that he's going to get pieced up in this fight. If he does win, probably another effort just like this, just a lot of takedowns, control time, and a ton of ground and pound. And I think that he's going to really struggle to do that against a much taller, more scrappy Ignacio Bahamandes. Yoel Alvarez, I expect a ton of people to get here this week, and for good reason. The guy is huge for the division. He is an assassin on the ground, and I think that he's going to give Armen Tsarukyan some serious problems this week. At 7,100, I expect a lot of people to get here, just 100% finishing rate. It's hard to get away from Yoel Alvarez, but he makes a lot of things work, especially like playing Islam Makhachev in your lineups. And for Michael Gilmore and Bobby Green, I'm not really interested in either of these guys. They just have really, really bad matchups on their hands. But outside of that, I do think that there's a lot of value below 8,000 this week. I'm going to save making lineups for the final picks video, but if you've enjoyed this at all, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel. It really helps me, and it helps me bring more of this to you.